although some people might think that. But he has been on the show before. This is a buddy of mine, Dylan. Is it Sine?
Yeah.
I've asked this before. Sine. From my grad school days, although we did not have class together at WVU, correct? We just knew people in common.
We overlapped in some friendship circles, but
that we did.
Did not have any time in the old chalkboard sessions.
I didn't think so. Were you on the 1 year or the 2 year, and I just missed you by a year?
Yeah, you would have been my second year if I strung it out a little bit, but I was in a hurry to get the hell out of there. So
yeah, I remember when I started. I originally was going to be on the 1 year plan, and then I panicked with I don't know. It was all the different classes because I started off with 5 classes that first semester, and I was like, this is too much. I'm gonna go to the 2 year. And Lotsky was kind of like, are you sure you want to do that? Who's head of the program, for those that don't know. Lotsky was like, are you sure you want to do that? A lot of people tend to regret that. And I did it anyway. I don't regret it because it just meant I got to stay in Morgantown for another year. But, yeah, that last year and definitely last semester, I was fighting off senioritis for sure.
It was definitely a lot harder to have the senioritis with the 5 to 6 classes per.
Yeah, it's 5. Well, technically, I guess it's maybe 6, but it's 5 each semester, and you can finish up in a year. But yeah, I did 3 and 3, and then 2 and 2. So the last year, I was basically a part-time student, which wasn't too bad, but. But how you doing? You're living up in the Rocky Mountains, right?
Yeah, I actually just spent the weekend at about 10,000 feet in a tent for the whole weekend, past weekend out here in Denver, and then was in the shadow of the highest mountain in Colorado on a camping trip with about 20 folks out in the middle of the woods. Yeah. Jumping back and forth here and there down to not quite your neck of the woods because Texas is half the size of America, but
You did tell me you were going down to Dallas, and I was like, dude, I can't make that trip.
Yeah, I'll be back again probably this weekend is the plan, because that's the other thing I've done it was right on about exactly 2 years since the last time you and I did this.
Yeah, I just looked at when I had you pulled up. It said August, I believe, 12th of 2020. We were talking about the upcoming football season, and which was still very much up in the air because of COVID. And I believe at that point, the Big Ten had already said it wasn't going to play, and I think the Pac-12 followed suit. The SEC said it would. The ACC said it would. And the Big 12 was kind of on the fence. They were the last one that really didn't make a decision until they ultimately decided to play. But yeah, we talked about that, but we are going to talk about more college football today. The season starts Thursday. We're recording this on Tuesday, so tomorrow, if you're listening. But you're already decked out in West Virginia. You got the helmet, you got the shirt, you got the helmet, and the what looks like a beer koozie behind you.
I got a whole stack of beer koozies back there because I am a West Virginia grad, so I'm legally required to keep at least 6 of those on hand at all times.
I got at least 1 or 2 in there, but if it's the one that I'm thinking of, I stole it. Yeah. Oh my God, you have more than a few.
Free Geico. Shout out to Geico, university sponsor still. The old Sport Management Club koozies.
I don't remember those.
Both of our existence.
Huh.
So these actually came when I took over as a junior the undergraduate program as the president, and was handed a box by the outgoing president and said, here, these are your problem now. And it was a box of 30 beer koozies, which I still possess in my parents' basement.
It's so funny you say that. I have a similar story with my koozie. So my last year at WVU in undergrad, I worked as an intern for the football program. And my boss was a man named Coleman Barnes, who is basically the number 2 within the football program outside of Neil Brown. And he's in charge of like the external part of football. He does a lot of fundraising and stuff like that. He had an event, and they had created this kind of almost like the MAC, like an athletic donor club or whatever, but I think it was specifically for the football program, called the 1891 Club. And they had an 1891 function or whatever, dinner, I don't remember, and he handed out those koozies, but he gave me the box. And so I had probably about 300, multiple hundreds of these koozies, and I took about 10 of them and just started handing them out to people I knew. I kept one. I think I gave one to my brother and my family, some family members, but I might have more than one now that I think about it. But yeah, I waited until the function was over. Because at that point, I was like, no one's going to give a shit at this point. And then I just took about a handful of them and kept them in my car. But, so let's talk college football. Do you want to start off with Backyard Brawl, or do you just want to get right into it?
I mean, I think when you have, 105th edition rivalry, I think that's a great way to kick off, this preview show, because we've been waiting. You and I have, we follow each other on all the socials, and we've been posting at least 2-3 times a day with the latest and greatest, people getting hyped up. It's truly like, last year you always kind of have those first week, those week 0 games that we had this past Saturday, which kind of get it,
it's fun. Like, this was the first time I kind of
games in the woods inside of my tent, saying I'm watching college football, but it's just not the same.
People still say, like, I would say I'm watching football, and people would be like, wait, there are games on?
Right.
And it's really just one game.
Yeah. It was like you had Nebraska Northwestern, which turned out to be mostly due to Nebraska's ineptitude, which we'll circle back to when we discuss the Big Ten. But, Nebraska's ineptitude, making that a closer game than it probably should have been in the fourth quarter, when Northwestern making, the comeback. But truly being able this Thursday, prime time, a Big East throwback schedule. A lot of people don't remember that. Even, talking to my mom yesterday afternoon, she goes, why the hell are all these Thursday games? I said, anybody that remembers the old Big East,
that's the ACC.
Every week, Thursday, 7 p.m., ESPN is in town. I'm still referring to it as Heinz Field.
I do the same thing.
And to have a full stadium that we've been waiting 11 years to take over.
That's so
and
hard
I actually
to believe.
saw ESPN has a new predictor. As much as you and I have our disagreements with ESPN's various predictors over the years, but ESPN has a fan predictor that is estimating a 3-1 West Virginia to Pitt.
I was going to bring that up. I just saw that before we hopped on. My brother sent me the link to that. And ESPN was reporting, according to, is it Vivid Seats, something like that?
I believe that's the contract.
Yeah, Vivid Seats. It's going to be about a 75% West Virginia crowd. I don't know. I don't really believe it's going to be that high. That's awfully high. However, I think 50-50 is beyond a reasonable expectation. It's going to feel more like a neutral site game more than anything else. Pitt does not have a home field advantage.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Pitt never has, and you and I, with the connections we have in that fan base and in that even kind of that athletic department with various people we've known, that they've been fighting since the day they moved out of Oakland to try and get back to a stadium, because they know they will never have, even last year, you have an ACC championship.
No, they barely sold out. They barely filled up for Kenny Pickett.
Empty every week.
Yes. I don't think last year, but they've hosted Clemson before, and I've seen Clemson, leading up to this week, I've been reading a lot of stuff about how Pitt fans are going to show up allegedly and for this game. And I one of the times I looked, a Clemson fan responded and was like, you don't even show up for Clemson. And you like a top 5 program just about on a yearly basis coming to town. You're going to show up for an unranked West Virginia. I know it's a rivalry, but I was like, They're
it's
not.
a rivalry game with a decade off, so that's where I think, I agree with you that 75% is kind of high on the estimate. I mean, I do have a tailgating group chat.
I think at a minimum it's going to be 50-50.
They always tease where they're like, just can't even have 10,000 fans to put in the seats.
No.
But that's the issue that I think, it's so difficult. West Virginia fans, despite the fact that people may not remember because it's been so long, so West Virginia has won the last 3 games of the series. A decade ago, yes, but did win the final 3 games before realignment destroyed one of the best rivalries in the sport. But, kind of getting back to that, West Virginia fans seem, I think, just because it gives us that motivation to give to the players to turn around what has been a middling program the last couple of years, much to both of our kind of dismay.
Yes.
And, being able to have that motivation. And Neil Brown, to his credit, has always been a culture coach. The X's and O's a lot of people have disagreed with, and I think having Graham Harrell come in was the home run coordinator hire of the offseason across the country.
His X's and O's really haven't been that bad. He's made some mistakes with personnel.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well to a point. And even kind of just the coaching staff never felt truly kind of cohesive. But to get back to the culture point, Neil Brown, if you follow West Virginia social media throughout the offseason, and especially in the last several weeks, has done a fantastic job of bringing in, Rasheed Marshall's spoken to the team, Jeff Hostetler's spoken to the team, guys that know and were born and bred to hate Pitt with every ounce of their body have been in front of the team to remind these players what.
Did you say Mark Bulger too?
Mark, I believe, has been either.
I heard Rasheed Marshall. I didn't catch the second name.
Jeff Hostetler.
Oh, Hostetler, yeah.
The team as well. And it was at least kind of spoken about it.
They should be leading up with dudes who are from that area. So I think Rasheed Marshall's from that area.
Rasheed Marshall's a Pittsburgh guy.
I don't know about Hostetler. I know he's probably from Pennsylvania. I know he went to Penn State first though. But I know Bulger's from that area, and then you got to finish it with McAfee. Hopefully.
Yeah, McAfee is already. I know people saw it from his Pat McAfee show when he was running the training camp circuit, to where he's going to be there with Pac-Man Jones on the sideline.
I didn't say him. I know he's going to be there. I didn't say him though because he's not from Pittsburgh.
Right. Yeah. But even kind of just those two are and even Louis Riddick was posting yesterday, I believe it was, on Twitter, which I have my feelings about Louis Riddick that we'll leave out of a college football broadcast, but him with his connections to Pitt and even kind of just the names that he's heard that are going to be in that stadium from years gone by is going to be just a who's who of
Pitt has no shortage of players too. I'm sure Darrelle Revis, probably Aaron Donald are going to show up. And you can think of several other names.
Shady McCoy still, I'm sure Shady McCoy will be there because he's still around Pennsylvania from what I know. And then, I watched a documentary yesterday, fantastic 40 minutes between the two athletic departments about the backyard brawl. And even, Pat Bostic, which his existence is forever burned in the brains of many Mountaineer fans from a certain night in 2007 where many hopes and dreams went to die. I still refer to that as the people that have never been involved with the rivalry is the largest funeral I have ever attended.
I wasn't there for that, thank God, but my gosh. I don't know about you. I tell this to several different people. I can't see 13-9 without just cringing.
Truly,
it goes across every single sport. Every sport. Basketball, baseball, I see 13-9. I'm like, someone score, please.
Truly, there are a large contingent, and I will be screaming "Eat shit Pitt" as loud as possible in a bar packed of West Virginia alumni here in Denver on Thursday afternoon.
Are there alumni in Denver?
There are, when I go to watch parties, we have our specific bar on the other side of downtown for me. It takes me about 25 minutes to get there. West Virginia alumna owns the place.
Oh, cool.
And every seat in there on Thursday afternoon will be clad in blue and gold with our alumni association. Giving out things. There was a pepperoni roll baking contest 3 weeks ago. There are plenty of people out here, and
I miss pepperoni
kind of being
rolls,
there.
man.
But a lot of my general social circle has a lot of outdoor activities and a lot of athletic-minded people, and so I play a lot of volleyball, and I get 13-9, a very common volleyball score, and I routinely, people will go, the score is 13-9, and they'll go, dear God, shoot me.
I'm
having
an aneurysm right now.
I hadn't thought of those numbers in that, and kind of just to piggyback off that documentary, they asked Pat White in the documentary, what is your opinion of the numbers 13 and 9? And he goes, the only thing I think about those numbers is 8 comes before 9, 10 comes after, 12 comes before 13, and 14 comes after. I think of nothing else with those numbers because I cannot do it.
That's funny. That's awesome, though, that there's a pocket of WVU fans in Denver. There's actually I obviously don't live in Houston, but I live fairly close by in Beaumont. That's about an hour and a half east of Houston. I went there last year for the opener against Maryland, and I was like, oh, this is great. There were a lot of, quite a few fans there for the opener. It was good to mingle among my own kind. And then the game went sour real quick. Not real quick, but as the game went on.
Right, yeah.
And I got in a horrible mood, and then as the season progressed, I was like, I'm not going to any more watch parties. This team isn't worth watching. I'm not spending all this money to drive an hour and a half to Houston, to downtown Houston, with gas prices the way that they are, to watch this shitty team when I can watch it at home and not spend any money. So that's where I stand. Hopefully this year it'll be better. That is my laundry, if you hear that.
You're riding quiet in the background. You are good.
Okay, cool. It'll go off again, too, unless I go over there and open it. But, yeah. So what are your impressions of Thursday?
Thursday,
do you want to pick the game, or what are your expectations?
So I'm happy to pick the game. I think I've seen the latest over-under. I've seen is 51, which I think is right on the money. It started in the upper 50s, almost 60s.
I don't see this being a shootout.
And so, I see the game. You've got two quarterbacks that are breaking in, two new offensive coordinators still working out the kinks, two defenses that, Pitt returns a lot of their defense from a conference championship team a year ago, especially up front. And West Virginia returns pretty much the entire front seven. Those that they're plugging and playing with. Got a JUCO or FCS transfer filling in at middle linebacker. That's one of the best transfers in the country. It's going to step right in. The back end, you've got, Woods on the right side corner coming back with the left side corner being an FBS transfer with 2,000 snaps of experience.
I think our secondary is a little bit better than what people are giving it credit for. I still worry about it quite a bit, though.
Truly, the safety spot still worries me because that's where the newness truly is without experience. There's talent there for sure, but the inexperience still worries me, especially week one with a lot of eye candy where the offensive coordinators have their entire offseason of all the harebrained ideas that they've come up with all their new toys on the outside. But I still think the defenses are going to, as always happens, kind of the beginning of the season, offenses can be a little ahead of schedule, but I think the defenses, talent-wise and cohesiveness, keep it in the low 20s. I see a 20-17 kind of game, 24-21 kind of final. With kind of some late action in the fourth quarter. You might have a 10-7 half or a 7-3 score at the break.
Yeah, I don't expect a lot of points to be scored. I would take the under in this game. I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm trying not to get ahead of myself, though. Um, but I think, well, I've come up with a few reasons why I think West Virginia +7 would be a really smart bet. Uh, Number one is, and we've already kind of touched on it, I think this rivalry means a lot more to one side than it does the other. And it's not Pitt.
Truly, like that was referenced in the documentary I watched yesterday. Is Tony Caridi was one I believe mentioned it.
Voice of the Mountaineers for those not listening, or that are listening. Sorry, I started off by saying for those that don't know, and then it went with who are listening.
Hey, sometimes people when we get to rambling or rambling men, sometimes people check out. But with kind of that reference of if you ask West Virginia fans who do they want to beat and who do they not want to lose to, the answer is absolutely you have to beat Pitt. And then I guess you could throw in if you really wanted to, it hasn't been played in a long time, but you cannot lose to Marshall.
No, Marshall. Well, okay, the case that you are making, that's not a bad case. You can't lose to Marshall. That's not bad. That doesn't necessarily mean that.
That doesn't mean that they're on the same.
I see what you're going for there. That's not bad.
It's very much a little brother relationship. For Pitt, the answer is completely different. The team you want to beat is Penn State.
Yeah.
The team you can't lose to is in Morgantown. So for them, they've always that's kind of been what's kept the rivalry alive for a long time, is kind of that, underdog mentality that it fits with every ounce of West Virginia athletics, and kind of always having, the series in football is in Pitt's favor and basketball is in West Virginia's favor. And, it's kind of historically having that back and forth.
I'm glad you touched up on that. I also think that's why that's the case for West Virginia, is because there is a large portion of the fan base who grew up similar to Penn State and West Virginia, which that was somewhat a big rivalry back in the day. There's a pocket of our fan base that grew up with Pitt beating us every single year, because Pitt was a really good program in the 60s, 70s, and it really didn't turn around into the 80s. But since the 80s and the last 40 years, West Virginia has dominated the rivalry.
True, yeah. I was saying I believe I want to say maybe 8 of the last 11, say for a couple that I might be off one way or the other.
I'll tell you right now, it's 2001, 2004, and 2007, and 2008.
Yeah, Pitt won in 07 and followed it up in 08 with it was a Shady McCoy run late that West Virginia thought that we thought we had them back. It was the get back game, and then 09 truly flipped the
That was
script.
the Tyler Bittencourt last second field goal. Yep.
19-16 from the left hash, I believe 43 yards, if my memory serves me.
Depending on where you're looking, yeah. If you're on the field, left hash.
And so kind of going back to that, but even pre Bittencourt, the game that truly swung the rivalry was one that predates both of us by a good ways. It was my dad's college days, way back when, 1975.
Bill McKenzie. Yeah, Bill McKenzie. I know the reference.
Right from the same hash, I believe about the same distance, when Pitt had one of their better teams ever back in the day in '75, and it's a game that wasn't supposed to be close. West Virginia pulls it out, a couple of late turnovers in that game, I believe, in '75, and truly because West Virginia was struggling through the Signetti years, which oddly enough to kind of bring back current, Frank Signetti, the son of then West Virginia coach Frank Signetti Jr., new offensive coordinator at Pitt, kind of bring the old flair back into the rivalry, and having a Signetti on the sidelines brings back the memories for a lot of the old timers. And a stat that I think a lot of people may not have heard yet is the previous 2 meetings, going back, I believe 10 or 15 years, thereabouts, kind of the mid 2000s, where Pitt was ranked and West Virginia was not. The most previous 2 meetings of that were West Virginia victories in the upset.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We can talk about this all day, but
so we can have an entire.
I was just looking at it. We're running on 32 minutes, and I know we didn't talk about this for all 32 minutes, but that's pushing a half an hour. So I say we get a move on here. People don't want to hear us talking about reminiscing about the backyard brawl, but I think I like West Virginia +7. I'm not ready to give a pick, but I'm leaning Pitt. I like the point you made earlier about 2 new quarterbacks, 2 new offensive coordinators. I think the offenses are going to be out of sync. That favors the defense, and I think Pitt, with a defensive-minded head coach and Pat Narduzzi, is in a better spot to win the game. I don't know about you.
Yeah, as much as my heartstrings don't want me to agree, I see potentially Pitt by 3 because Narduzzi, part of the offseason issue with switching the offensive coordinators allegedly was due to the fact Narduzzi is a ground-and-pound defense coach.
Yeah.
And so he's going to get back to running the football. Weather's going to be perfect this weekend in Pittsburgh. So, you won't necessarily have to run the football. West Virginia losing Letty Brown, replacing with Tony Mathis, which is kind of more of a power jitterbug runner, but, kind of just settling in. And, I think both teams will be able to run the football. I think it's just a matter of who runs the football more. And I think kind of just Pitt having the slightly more cohesive defense kind of leans that way. But
they're also just in a better spot as a program. They return a lot in the trenches on both sides of the ball. I think my brother pointed out they have one of the oldest offensive lines in the country. Just that's where the game's won, so I feel like Pitt has the slight advantage, but you never know.
And it's a rivalry game. I mean, I know where my profanities will lie on Thursday in my rooting interests.
I invited 2 of my friends here in Beaumont out because Thursday is payday and the backyard brawl, and I was like, hey, why don't y'all come out? We'll go to a bar or something. They don't follow sports all that much. They're from the Pacific Northwest. And I was like, why don't y'all come out? We'll have some drinks, do something fun during the week, long weekend, whatever. And I was like, West Virginia plays, and I was thinking today, I'm like, do I want them to come out really and see me that way?
Truly, and I kind of tell you that I've had kind of the same thing. Thursday is usually an evening out for me. I'm like, I'm going to go with my Mountaineer fans. I have to leave early enough because out here on the Mountain Time Zone, I will be at the bar at 4 o'clock to be there in time for kickoff.
I'll probably leave work early, although I'm taking a half day on Friday.
See, I'll have a half day on Thursday because in the finance department, we get the first day of the month, we get a half day.
Oh, you bastard.
Close the books. And, the girlfriend has to work till 4:30. Sorry, babe. I'm going to go to the bar. I'll see you after.
Are you announcing that here? Have you told her that?
No, she is perfectly aware that she is working, and she will see me hopefully for Kansas on September 10th in a far more pleasant mood, if necessary.
That'll be the get. Hopefully not, because hopefully we will win on Thursday. But if not, hopefully Kansas is the get right game.
I would go with that. I think just to, like you said, to get us moving. We had the Pacific Northwest reference. I think kind of the most intriguing offseason of any conference. What do you say we kick things off with the Pac-12?
Well, real quick before we do, I want to, because we're just gonna touch up on it for a little bit. Heisman. Who's your favorite?
Of course, yeah. So let's start with the awards. That makes yes.
Well, let's just do the Heisman. No one really gives a shit about the other awards.
Right.
Who do you got?
I see I see 3 quarterbacks at the top this year. I think you've got Stroud. Bryce Young's going to have another strong year. I know the Heisman committee, to me, seems to shy away from players winning a second time. That way we can kind of keep the, 80s, kind of that one time that it happened, kind of be the one time that someone won it twice. So I think Bryce Young's on the stage, but I don't think he's holding the trophy this year. So I think to me, it comes down between, I think you see C.J. Stroud at Ohio State, which I know is your pick.
Yeah.
I think he's there. And then I think another dark horse name that doesn't get a lot of national exposure that coming off of last season is you've got Cam Rising.
I was just thinking Cam Rising, yeah.
Because Cam Rising, I remember being in the airport on New Year's Day watching that outstanding Rose Bowl to in the New Year's Six last year, and just watching that go back and forth, and kind of being on the Mountain Time Zone. Like I see more of that this year, having lived it. That the exposure is just different, and even living near Boulder, Power 5 University at CU, there's not a lot of college sports people out here that get the national exposure because they're used to being that off time zone. Pac-12 after dark is as much for us diehards is an icon, but for other people it's kind of a running joke of why no one ever watches.
When I was in college, I loved Pac-12 after dark because you're up till 3 a.m. anyway, so you might as well watch football till 3 a.m.
Right.
I like those 3 picks. I think it really comes down to, barring injury, Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud. I typically don't like going with favorites, so I went with C.J. Stroud. There have been a lot of quarterbacks to win the Heisman who came back the next year, and we always thought they're going to, have a very good chance of winning it all.
PP, and it never is.
It never really is. Do they even get invited back? They might have, but it can't be very much. I know Matt Leinart did one time.
Matt Leinart was in New York the next year, but I think finished maybe 4th or 3rd.
Yeah, but and Reggie Bush won it. So it's happened before, but it's rare.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with C.J. Stroud.
Yeah, that's a pick I like. I mean, I would just for the sake of going with my own pick so that we can have
but that's I wouldn't be shocked. Bryce Young is loaded with talent.
I think Cam Rising can be that pick with Utah. Utah this year has more kind of primetime national TV spots that they didn't get last year. Obviously Cam Rising didn't start the season. Came in, I believe it was week 3, and kind of just settled in. So I think with Utah getting more national exposure, I think Cam Rising could be a pick.
All right, so let's stay in the Pac-12 like you wanted to do earlier. Who do you see winning this conference? I think it really comes down to about 3 teams.
Yeah, for me, I was kind of just even looking at the standings just now. I think Utah is ultimately the team that does. I think they're the most complete team. They have a strong defense coming back from last year. Yeah, they got lit up in the Rose Bowl, but that game was kind of an anomaly defensively to their season. USC is kind of that team that is going to be the sexy pick.
Yeah.
With the transfer portal additions, new coach, new quarterback. I'm not particularly high on Caleb Williams myself, given kind of just the inconsistency that I saw in Oklahoma.
Yeah, he was what, a true freshman last year?
They went back and forth with he and Spencer Rattler. Were like, you're going to have a national championship program. I think you've got to have, that's what I think kind of doomed Oklahoma's season towards the end last year a little bit, which is kind of that inconsistency of, can you really be in the playoff if you don't know who your quarterback's going to be on a weekly basis?
Yeah.
And so I think that's what dooms USC. I think USC maybe starts, 3-2, they have a weaker kind of schedule in the beginning, but I think USC comes on strong late, but I don't think it's enough to get them past Utah to get into the Pac-12 title game. And, kind of Oregon's that other team.
Yep.
Oregon kind of coming out of the North. We'll find out who Oregon is real quick. The shirts and gloves are off week 1 with Georgia. That's going to be a fantastic start to everyone's Saturday afternoon. 3:30 kick, ABC, kind of first primetime ABC game of the fall, and kind of just seeing what they have against the defending champs.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I think the Pac-12 comes down to those 3 teams. I don't remember if you said a pick or not. I think you did go with Utah.
I will stick strongly by Utah because we'll circle back to our feelings about Utah's ultimate destination this season later on.
Yeah, I'm really high on Utah. They were, and people really don't realize this because I guess of their final record, they finished like 10-4 last year. But they lost like 2 of their first 3 games. I don't remember, and made a
Yeah, they
quarterback
had a
change.
really, really rough September because their schedule was rough, and then we mentioned a little bit ago, Cam Rising did not start the season.
Yeah,
kind of came on. They switched quarterbacks, and then he kind of settled in and took the reins.
and then I believe they won like 9 of their last 11, including beating Oregon twice. I'm pretty sure. And then went toe-to-toe with Ohio State in the Rose Bowl, came up just short because the game wasn't another 2 minutes longer or whatever.
Right, 61-minute game, Utah's your team.
Probably. But yeah, very high on Utah. Cam Rising looks really good. They return a lot of production. Kyle Whittingham always has that team physical in the trenches defensively. I think they're going to be a really tough out. We'll know about them against Florida now. That's a game they should win, but that's a long road trip against an SEC school, in a hostile environment. A lot of, excitement for the Napier era in Gainesville, but Utah ought to win that game. And if not, they're going to have problems.
Yeah, and truly, what helps, it doesn't help you get in the playoff, but what really helps is the Pac-12 has struggled it's a very weak bottom conference to me. You're going to have 4, maybe 5 teams that are fighting between 3 and 9 and 5 and 7.
Yeah.
And only 1 or 2 of them may end up at 5 and 7. And unfortunately, with me trying to find some good college football to watch out here in Denver, Colorado is going to hold down the basement again this year, I believe. There's just a lot of weakness in that program, not a lot of great recruiting, not a lot of great, kind of facilities. And so I think you have a lot of teams that are kind of in the middle. And I think what kind of will ultimately kind of doom USC from being competitive. So I think you have a little bit of what you're going to have with Oklahoma and Texas in the Big 12, we'll get to in a little bit, is everybody knows, and I remember it from the old Big East, and why 2011 the Backyard Brawl was such a big deal. It's because everybody wants to beat USC and UCLA and kick them in the pants on their way out the door. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. I still think USC has a lot of talent. I think Caleb Williams is promising. I'm not sure how good he is, though, because I believe he was just a true freshman last year. They added Jordan Addison. They had a really good transfer portal class. I don't think they're anywhere near where they need to be in the trenches to be a really good team in the country. I think I had them going 9-3, along with Oregon. If Oregon's not playing Georgia week 1, I might go 10-2 there. But both going 9-3. I don't know how the tiebreakers work. I just went with USC because I think in that instance, because they don't play each other, it would go by what you're ranking, and probably USC would be higher ranked for whatever reason, just the way I think. And I have them going up against Utah again in the Pac-12 championship. I have Utah winning for a second time, and USC falling to 9-4. But if you're a USC fan and they go 9-4. And get an Alamo Bowl with a potential to win 10 games, you got to feel pretty good about that.
Yeah, especially I think for year 1, Lincoln Riley fell into a way better situation at Oklahoma than he's walking into it in USC from talent perspective coming off the Bob Stoops era. So I think that's really where the difference is for year 1 to where he's not, USC is going to be back, I think, soon enough to being a 10, 11 win program every single season. Mm-hmm. So, like you said, if you have a shot at 10 year 1, I don't think USC fans over the years, especially recently, have kind of come back to earth a little bit, but kind of a notoriously haughty fan base of expectations to where they're going to expect 12-1. But they're not going to get it. So you're going to have contingents of the fan base that are going to be disappointed. But I think the large majority of the USC fans are.
I don't know if you have the preseason poll up, but was USC picked to win the conference in the preseason?
The preseason poll, I don't believe that they were. I believe they were close, but.
But while you're looking that up, I'll go ahead and go through the rest of the conference. I think the 4th team is UCLA, kind of in the distant 4th category. Chip Kelly has finally kind of got it going at UCLA. I still don't think they're going to be that good. I see them winning, 7 or 8 games. The team I have in 5th that I think is going to surprise a lot of people is Oregon State. I can't think of the coach's name.
Oregon State's been quietly building.
I was just about to say, like I think his name is Jonathan Smith is the head coach. He came from Chris Peterson's staff at Washington.
Correct.
Are you looking that up?
I am, and I've got your USC was picked in the poll. Your top 4 of the preseason media poll was Utah, Oregon, USC, UCLA.
Okay, I thought USC was at least second, but all right. But I'm really high on Jonathan Smith and Oregon State. They were a decent 7-6 team last year. I think they finished 7-5 and then lost the bowl game. And then they beat, I'm pretty sure it was Utah in a shootout. They've improved their win total with the exception of the COVID year in 2020. Each year he's been there, so I think that's a quietly good team to watch out for.
You're officially in with your players without any doubt. No holdovers with COVID. Kind of players to where this is his team, this is his staff. That staff's been held together, I believe, since year 1, maybe year 2. He's maybe switched a position coach or 2 here or there, but kind of the top, half of that staff has been together now several years. And with the transfer portal these days, that's what a lot of people don't understand is coaching continuity is everything in this modern era of college football.
Yeah. Then there are 3 teams after them: Arizona State, Washington. Well, I'm sorry, 4 teams with the Washington schools, Arizona State, and Stanford. I don't really know what to expect. I think
those are the teams for me that you may have 1 or 2 of those that you might have. I think you end up maybe potentially 4 teams. I think in the Pac-12 at 6-6.
Yeah, Arizona State's a mess off the field right now with all kind of recruiting allegations or violations. Washington is returning a lot of talent, but new coaching staff. Washington State is breaking into new coaching staff, although they brought in probably one of the more underrated quarterbacks from the transfer portal in Cameron Ward, who was lighting it up at the FCS level here nearby at Incarnate Word. And then Stanford. Stanford is returning like a whopping 95% of production from last year from a team that was 3-9. How much of a difference is that going to make? I don't know. But could they flirt with bowl eligibility? Sure.
In the cow pasture, how much better can they be?
Yeah. And David Shaw's coaching for his job, I think. So we'll see.
I think he's been given a very lengthy leash by that administration because Stanford historically is a very conservative athletic department when it comes to changing coaches for performance on the field. And so I think, he's run out where I think he's a very proud man, David Shaw. Love him as a person, love him as a coach. But I think ultimately he sees this year where even if he is not told, like Stanford may not outright fire him at the end of the season, but I think you might see, if Stanford's not in a bowl game, I think December 1st you're looking at David Shaw's resignation.
And their schedule is brutal. I know they got BYU and Notre Dame in the out-of-conference. Then I think they draw like USC and obviously Oregon and Washington, and it's just a really tough schedule. I was like, they're going to make a bowl game, and then I kept looking. I'm like, I don't know if they are. It's just tough.
Yeah, they're 3 points one way or the other a couple of weeks, I think, from a bowl game ultimately, but whether or not they're able to pull it off is a tough ask.
Then I got your typical, unfortunately, because I kind of like these schools, but Cal, Arizona, and Colorado, I think we got them all. Bringing up the rear. I think Cal, who's the coach there? Justin Wilcox, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
He had it going a little bit. I think he has since been overshadowed by other schools getting better, like Oregon State, Washington State, schools like that. And Colorado really hasn't been good outside of 1 year under McIntyre and in the 90s. Arizona has stunk for years, although I think they'll be a little bit better this year. But that's roughly what I have. We didn't mention Pac-12 no longer has divisions, by the way. Failed to mention that. If they were with divisions, I'd strongly consider picking Oregon State to be in the Pac-12 championship. I'm that high on them.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and that's kind of the big change, which gives USC hope, I think, this year. Because otherwise, I think your clear title game in the old system would have been Utah and Oregon.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, that was would have been a clear option. Yeah, I agree. Kind of with the bottom tier teams, I think we're in lockstep with our opinions of them. There's just a lot of unknowns, inconsistencies. I maybe even am a little less high on Arizona State than you are. I see Arizona State potentially with all of the issues overshadowing them to a 4-8 season.
That's
and bumping
completely fair.
To a bowl game with that.
That's completely fair. So I don't know where to go from here. We had a nice, decent segue last time with the Pacific Northwest. Not so much this time. So I just say we go back to the alphabetical order and go with the ACC. Back here, we're closer to our neck of the woods on the East Coast. I don't know about you. I think that this is likely a 2-team race, maybe a 3-team race.
Yeah, for me, I look at Clemson. For me, is more of a wild card than I think that you're more sold on them.
Okay.
For me, I see Clemson ultimately being the team. I just don't know how good they look. I don't have a spoiler alert here. I don't have Clemson in my playoff.
Okay, we're about on the same page with them.
I'm not sold on Uiagalelei.
Yeah.
Saw enough last year of kind of inconsistent play with him. Obviously, they have Kate Kublik, coming off of the bench if they need to by week 3 or 4.
Yeah, and that's something they didn't have last year. They really didn't have that,
there was no
5-star
one
guy
behind DJ last year, and that was kind of a lot of their issue was he's a 5-star. He was the heir apparent to Trevor Lawrence. We've just got to ride it out. He's just making freshman mistakes, and coaches let freshman mistakes happen when there's not a junior or sophomore behind them. Yeah. That's kind of just always how it is with coach speak is, you let what you have to let happen occur. And that was kind of, I think, they kind of got caught, the Clemson coaching staff did last year, of not having 2 heir apparents, which they didn't think they would need. And so I think, kind of just think how high the coaching staff is on Cade, kind of by the end of September if DJ struggles.
Yeah.
For me, I think, kind of the other 2 teams I have a feeling that you're reaching for are Miami and NC State.
Yep.
NC State's nationally not getting a lot of respect.
I agree.
Remember how good
although
they
I
were
do
last
believe
year.
they were picked to win the ACC in the preseason poll.
That I believe Clemson still had them because they are still in the Atlantic with Clemson.
Yeah.
So I think that was kind of what held them back. But I think kind of the Atlantic is going to be a far more exciting race. Ultimately,
which is funny because about a decade ago, the Coastal was considered to be so much better, and now it's flipped.
Yeah. And now it's completely the opposite. I think there's 3.5 quality teams for me in the Atlantic. I think you throw in. I'm a little higher on Wake Forest. I
was going to say I would put Wake Forest up there.
I like Wake more than I like Louisville or Florida State. Yeah. I think Florida State makes a jump. This is year 3 with Norvell.
Yes, I would advise caution with that because Sam Hartman just got hurt, and it just said out indefinitely. I don't know how long exactly that'll be.
That was an ankle injury? I
don't
believe
remember.
I heard
I didn't
something.
hear that.
I think it was with a leg, which was kind of an issue that they've had that he's had in the past. If that is indeed the same injury, so I think that could flip between Louisville and Florida State for me in the Atlantic. The Coastal for me, I think Pitt ultimately comes back as still a 9-win team, and I kind of see North Carolina. I'm not sure what to make of. They got kind of their week 0 game out of the way with Florida A&M. Florida A&M missing half of their roster with ineligibility issues, mostly administration caused, not even the players, which is frustrating as a young person. That the adults in the room let 20-some players down, and so I think kind of we're not really sure what to make of North Carolina replacing Sam Howell just yet.
I'll get to North Carolina in a bit. I completely agree. I think the ACC comes down to 3 teams: Clemson, NC State, and I'm going to throw Miami in there. And I'll start with Miami first. I think there's a very good chance this is going to be a seamless transition for Mario Cristobal. He's from South Florida, so he's a cultural fit. They brought in an excellent transfer portal class, which they poached 2 of West Virginia's players for.
Yeah, I know them well. Yes.
He put together, I think, an impressive staff. And he inherited a quarterback by the name, I think it's Tyler Van Dyke. I can never remember his first name.
Yeah.
But Van Dyke, he is in the draft circles. I think he's highly thought of to be a highly.
I see him as potentially a 3rd to 4th round, maybe 5th round pick at worst in next year's draft.
Worst. I was like, I think you need to be preparing for a day 1 or 2 pick.
I think if he has a terrible season, he's a 5th rounder, but I do see him more probably as a 3rd round pick.
But they're high on him. I have Miami winning 10 games right off the bat and going to the ACC championship.
I think for me in the Coastal, I think Pitt makes less of a fall than a lot of people may think, just because of the defense being able to hold on. And so I ultimately see, and what made my decision to put Miami in the ACC title game for me is I see November 26th. I was kind of just checking the schedules.
They play Pitt last.
They play Pitt November 26th in South Florida. I think the Miami and Pitt struggle with the same kind of Coral Gables and Miami disconnect.
I did see that they are trying to build a stadium for Miami much closer to the university. Not on the campus, but much closer.
Yeah, because I think currently it's about 45 minutes from campus with traffic, which is, a more extreme version of the same problem that Pitt struggles with. But I think ultimately playing it at home in Miami in the late November is ultimately what, kind of could set up an ACC Coastal Championship game in Thanksgiving week, which, we all love our Thanksgiving college football as well, kind of that same week. And so I think ultimately that's where you see a Clemson-Miami matchup and, Miami being back in that position for the first time in a while, being able to kind of have that level. Like, I still think by that point, Clemson's ironed out whatever issues maybe pop up in September, and kind of Clemson rolls to where I still see that maybe being a 10-point game in the later stages of the season champ week.
Yeah, I don't think Miami is going to win the ACC. I think it's going to be in the championship go. Remember that this is going to be the last year for divisions in the ACC. I think the winner of the ACC is going to be whoever wins the Atlantic. It's Clemson or NC State. I'll start with Clemson for me. Last year was a down year, and they still won 10 games. They return a lot of that production. DJ Uiagalelei, I can't get his name right. Uiagalelei, I think. I don't think is that good. He should be better. But if he's not any better, they do have Cade Klubnik behind him who can potentially come in the game. If that has to happen, it's probably going to be more of the same as last year. But they get NC State at home, and I think that is likely going to decide the division. And I'm going to give Clemson the slight advantage for that. I'm really high on NC State, though. They have a good quarterback in Devin Leary. They return a lot of production on both sides of the ball. I think they're going to be a team to watch out for.
Yeah, and I think if Clemson, which Clemson's been known to do in the past with a couple of losses to bad Pitt teams in the first couple of years, maybe in the early part of before Trevor Lawrence came into his own, I think you kind of can see maybe some stumbles like that in the early season where I think if Clemson loses 3 games in the regular season, I think you're looking at an NC State championship.
Yeah, I have Clemson winning finishing 10-2 and then winning the ACC, so 11-2, and just missing the playoffs. So we're about, I would imagine, on the same page for Clemson.
Yeah, I see Clemson ultimately probably being kind of that 6-7 spot, maybe, kind of towards the final playoff selection poll.
Then there's a pocket of teams where it kind of gets crowded in the ACC. I think like Pitt, North Carolina, probably Wake Forest, Louisville, Florida State are all kind of all on the same level. North Carolina, it's going to be hard to replace Sam Howell, but they have been recruiting really well under Mac Brown, so I think they have a lot of talent. I think they're going to be maybe a little bit better than people think. I have them as like an 8-win team. About the same for Pitt.
I put them in kind of that 7-8 win range just based on their recruiting talent. They had some moderate success, I think, in the transfer portal as well. Mostly, I believe, on the offensive side of the ball, kind of bringing in some receivers that should help with transitioning a new quarterback.
As for Pitt, they're returning a lot of production, but I think last year's team that won 11 games is very overvalued because the ACC was really bad. When Pitt and Wake Forest are playing for your conference championship, that's not good. I'm just going to be honest.
Yeah, I was saying, both teams
no disrespect to those
programs. Both teams were 9-win teams. Like, that's what they should have been.
But Virginia Tech was bad. North Carolina underperformed. Miami was bad. So I think Pitt – I don't think Pitt is as good as its 11-win team as last year. That team was probably more like a 9-win team, and it won 11. This year, I see them being more of an 8-win team. And then I think Louisville's going to be better. They're returning a lot of talent. Scott Satterfield's kind of on the hot seat. I think Florida State's going to be better, but I don't know how much better. Norvell's not.
I see ultimately Florida State as a 6-win team, maybe winning, kind of week 12, week 13 to get to that 6th win.
Yeah, they really haven't been recruiting all that well.
I mean, and their transfer portal additions were underwhelming at best.
Yeah. I have them at 7-5. I think Norvell is a good coach. I think he'll find a way to get there. I do like Wake Forest. I think I'm pretty sure I already touched up on that. Dave Clawson might be the most underrated head coach in the conference, maybe the country. They have everything in place, I think, to be a good team, but Sam Hartman's injury, I think, will set them back. Then I like Boston College and Virginia a little bit more than I probably should. I think they have 2 NFL-caliber quarterbacks in Brennan Armstrong and Phil Jurkovich, I believe is his name. Jurkovich.
Yeah. I think, but truly for me, what I struggle with them.
And I should say, I see them at like 6 and 6.
Around them. Like, that's always been the issue. Both teams, like, I think Boston College has struggled mightily on defense the last 4 to 5 seasons. And I think Virginia's going to have that same problem again this year.
Yeah, Virginia's breaking in a new coaching staff.
I think that's what keeps 8-win teams to being 5-win teams.
No, yeah, I don't see them being all that good. I think they can get to bowl eligibility.
Yeah, I see them potentially, like, to me, I think Boston College struggles so much on the defensive side of the ball where I think they're a 5-win team, maybe even 4 if the schedule falls wrong.
And then I believe we touched them all after this. Syracuse, Georgia Tech, and Duke, I think, are going to have a really hard time getting to bowl eligibility.
There's nothing on any of those rosters to give me any sort of hope for any of those programs. Duke's fallen on some hard
Duke
times.
is just starting over. I mean,
alumnus in common and our friend August that played at Duke, and I think with kind of the talent they have on the defensive side of the ball, he could walk in and start for them today.
That dude, he's got to be in his 30s now, and I think he could, yeah. Just Duke's hitting the reset button after the Cutcliffe era is now over, and even then the program had been slacking under him his last few years. Georgia Tech, I'm not sure it's going to be much better than what it's been the last couple of years under Jeff Collins. And then Syracuse, once upon a time, Dino Babers was a hot name, and he has really gone downhill after beating our asses in the bowl game in 2018.
We rubbed off a little bit of the stink onto the Syracuse program, and I've been dragging them down ever since. That's what I like to tell myself.
All right, so that's the ACC. Let's shift west a little bit to the Big Ten. Unlike those other 2 conferences we mentioned, I don't see this being any more than a 2-team race.
Yeah, even for me, I honestly don't even see it as a 2-team race. I think truly what makes the difference for me, Ohio State is by far and away the best team in the league. I don't think it's even close. Truly, I think Michigan ends up potentially a 9 or 10 win team. But what scares me with Michigan is the indecisiveness from the coaching staff.
Yeah, I don't get why they're not naming a quarterback.
When you're saying before the first snap of the season, we're not going to decide on our quarterback until week 4. I don't see how you win 10 games with that consistency. You may think, oh, they're all 3 great. Neil Brown had 4 guys listed at the or designation in the 2 deep until last week. Which
I can't stand that shit. I really can't. I get it in June, but a week before the game, after you added JT Daniels, you're not fooling anyone, dude. Which you named JT Daniels the starter.
Yeah, you honestly everyone knew in June, like you said, everyone knew in June who was going to be under center on September 1st. And so I kind of always laugh at the three guys still in the or designation for the backup spot. I kind of get it, but it's the week of the game. You need to know who's got to have the helmet on instead of the clipboard in their hand. But for me, that's the issue that I have with Michigan, and because Harbaugh's been non-committal with quarterbacks in the past, and that's what kept Michigan. Like last year, they finally had the same guy for 13 games, and you saw what that program can be.
Yeah, and I don't get why he won't double down on it.
Yeah.
So I agree. I have Ohio State winning this conference. I don't see them going undefeated. I don't think they're good enough defensively to do that. I think they will stumble somewhere.
I see a shootout loss somewhere in the schedule. I don't know who it is. So there are some teams kind of in the middle of the conference. Maybe they follow. Pull up Ohio State's schedule really quick to see who they pull from the other.
I believe they play Purdue. I think that's a sneaky game. I don't remember though. It's going to have to take
I think kind of the schedule they pull. The one schedule I think that worries me for Ohio State is the trip to East Lansing.
Yeah.
That could be an easy one to
do they get
to
Penn
lose.
State at home?
Give me one. Yeah, so Ohio State starts off, Saturday night with the Notre Dame game. I don't think Notre Dame's going to be as good as people think.
No.
I'm really high on Marcus Freeman as a man and as a coach. I just don't see them being able to put up the points to, I think, make that game close.
Yeah.
And then Ohio State gets a couple of weeks off with some, the cheap non-conference games. Wisconsin, I don't think can score with Ohio State either. The Rutgers is going to be better, not great.
No.
The trip to East Lansing, I think, is where you trip up in the middle of October when the expectations start to
maybe, yeah.
Okay. Or even I tell you a game that people might not think because they just named their starting quarterback today. I think Iowa's that team that could just mess around and no one will see it coming because the spread on that game will be like 21-24 points in Ohio State's favor.
Iowa, I'll get to them in a bit, but they have to win in a specific way. But it could be enough to trip up Ohio State because they're obviously a really good defensive team. I think you got to score points to be able to beat Ohio State. I'm not sure if Iowa can do it, but they do play that feisty defense.
You'd get it one of those games kind of late October in Central Ohio, one of those classic football weather kind of games is what would keep that game close. If it's 70 and sunny, I don't think that game's close.
Nope.
But what kind of could also leave Ohio State vulnerable in that one is that's a sandwich game. You've got Michigan State the week before, Penn State the week after.
Where's the Penn State game?
The Penn State game is also in Happy Valley, to where it's.
I think that's the game I had them losing.
Yeah, so you've got that because I don't see much else on their schedule.
They should beat Michigan at home.
Michigan in the shoe after what happened last year. I think
Maryland is a sneaky one to watch. I think Maryland's better offensively than a lot of people think.
Maryland's that team that I think they have the offense.
Yeah.
That they could mess around and put up the points if Ohio State's defense and secondary come to play.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Is that game the week before the Michigan game?
Say again?
Is that game before the Michigan game? That could also be a trap game?
That's the final tune-up before the big game.
Yeah, that might be another one that I had circled that as a potential L, but it was Penn State or Maryland. I don't remember which one.
So Penn State just kind of playing, the that'll be the whiteout game again, as it always is when Ohio State's in town. And you know how Penn State fans are with the whiteout game. So you have that. Penn State's also gonna, Penn State has the talent. I don't think people will remember how good Penn State was supposed to be last year.
Yeah.
But I know that's something that you and I that you've talked about previously. Is Sean Clifford's a lot better than I think he gets credit for, because
I don't really agree with that, but
a lot of people blame the losses on him last year when he was hurt.
Yeah, I don't know if he's that good. I don't think he's that good of a quarterback. But the team went downhill after he got hurt.
Yeah, for me, he's one of those upper-level game manager kind. He's not going to win you a game, but he's not going to lose you the game.
Yeah, I was very surprised that Penn State wasn't ranked anywhere in the AP Top 25. I had them in my top 10 because I think Sean Clifford means that much to the team. But the fact that Penn State wasn't ranked at all.
Yeah, I see them as a top, if I were throwing together my DS top 25 here, I would probably put Penn State in the teens.
I can't take credit for calling it the SP top 20 or top 10. There's a guy who works for 24/7 Sports named Josh Pate, and he has his own podcast, and he calls his own rankings the JP poll, which is way better than mine because it rhymes with AP poll. But I was like, that'll work though. I can take that. I can take that idea.
I had to slide that reference in there. But I think, truly, like, Wisconsin I see as a good team. For me, you've got Purdue and Iowa in the West.
Purdue is my Oregon State in the Big Ten.
Yeah, that's another team that I don't think a lot of people nationally know a lot about. Yeah. Truly, to where the talent level that Purdue's kind of had. Purdue's got an offense that they haven't had in a long time.
They have a quarterback. They can score points. Jeff Brown's been recruiting very well there. That's a sneaky good team, I think.
Yeah, I think if Wisconsin, which they haven't in a long time, but I think if Wisconsin struggles more than we're used to seeing running the football, because I don't think Wisconsin's got a quarterback that's going to save them.
I don't either.
And so I think Purdue, for me, is a team – I'm not really high on Wisconsin at all. I see Wisconsin as an 8-win team.
Okay.
And so I think because they kind of just are going to struggle to win games offensively, and I don't know that their defense is as strong as it's been in years past to save the offense. And so I think Purdue is a team that can outscore them and a lot of other teams on their schedule and be Ohio State's last meal.
So we're kind of jumping all over the place. Let's go back to the division breakdowns. I have Ohio State winning the East. I'm sure you do too. In the West, though, you've basically said you're ruling out Wisconsin. I assume you're going with Iowa then. I
am putting Purdue as my team.
Oh, you had the guts to do it. I didn't. So shout out to I think our friend is fair enough, Jerem McLeaver, who I don't think you knew Jerem.
Jerem and I were around each other, but I don't think we have that deep connection where we've ever met.
I couldn't remember if you knew him or not. I might be mixing you up with someone else, but no, it was you. I think we were DMing about it. I was like, "Hey, did you know Jerem?" And you're like, "No, I don't think I did." But Jerem McLeaver, who is a Purdue homer alum, I told him before I released my predictions, I was like, "I think you're going to like where I have Purdue." And I have them finishing second in the Big Ten West, I'm pretty sure. I did go with Wisconsin. I don't like it because I don't think they have a quarterback either. But I trust Paul Chryst. They're always good in the trenches. They have a good defense. They run the ball well. They ought to win, like you said, 8 games. I have them winning 9. So we're not that much of a difference between the two of us. So I have them winning the West at 9-3, then losing the Big Ten championship, about like USC finishing 9-4. I actually have Michigan winning 11 games. I think they're going to be both Michigan and Ohio State are going to be roughly undefeated going into that last weekend. Or Michigan is going to be undefeated. Sorry, I just realized that I messed up. But I do because look at Michigan's schedule. They really sleepwalk the first 5 weeks of the season. They got like Hawaii. I think it's Hawaii. It might not be Hawaii. But like UConn and Colorado State and Maryland and a bunch of other schools. I know they're losing quite a bit on defense. Aiden Hutchinson is gone, but they're still really solid on offense. They can score points if they want to. I don't get what their deal is with the quarterback. That does concern me, like you just said. But 10-2, I think, is easily attainable for them.
Yeah, and I think the reason why they can be as wishy-washy from Harbaugh's perspective, like you said, Colorado State's going to be a 4-win team, to start your season. So you go with your strongest your strongest bet of the 3 quarterbacks there. Hawaii just got lit up by Vanderbilt in week 0. So if that tells you anything about what the kind of season Hawaii's going to have when Vandy can score 35 in the third quarter on you, I don't have much hope for their season. UConn, Jim Mora, I think is the exciting part of UConn's season is the fact that Jim Mora's on a sideline, and when that's the highlight of your season.
I remember when they hired him, I was like, I guess you should be happy about getting a guy with NFL head coaching experience to want that job. But
I think that says more about Jim Mora's career than I think it does about the UConn program.
Probably.
And I think, like you said, for Michigan, their first game that their fans even have to tune in for is the Maryland game.
Okay.
And
I was going to say the Iowa game, which I think is the next week, but yeah.
Yeah, so you've got kind of those games, and then, October is a an iffy schedule for them. You got at Iowa, at Indiana, then Penn State, but you get Penn State at home, Michigan State at home, Rutgers on the road. Like their road schedule is very weak.
They might trip up somewhere in there.
Somewhere in there they lose one. I don't know which one it is. And then you've got 2 warm-up games in Nebraska and Illinois. We'll touch on them here shortly before the big game, the shoe. I don't see a whole lot of losses with the weakness in the schedule. I had
them at 11-1. I'm probably being a little generous there.
10. I'm not sure I can commit to 11.
Yeah, I went with 11, but like I said, I'm probably being generous there. Michigan State, I don't think really has a quarterback, so we'll go ahead and go to the other tier then. There's about, 4 or 5 teams in the Big Ten that's in this second tier. I would throw Wisconsin in there. I would throw Purdue, Iowa, Michigan State, Penn State. Probably those. Yeah, I would say those 5. I think that's.
I would say those because the rest of the like I see I think drop off.
I think these teams are good, not great.
Put Maryland in there if you really like Maryland's offense.
Not really. I don't like them that much.
I'm not that high on. I'm high on Maryland more than a lot of people I think are, but I don't think I'm that high on them.
Yeah, I think Penn State's going to bounce back if they can stay healthy. I think that's a big key. Michigan State, I think, takes a step back. They won, I think it was like 5 of their 10 or 11 games last year by less than 10 points. And they lose their really only good offensive player. And why am I blanking? Kenneth Walker. I also question their quarterback position, but I think Mel Tucker is a pretty good coach, and I know they're going to have a good defense. So they should still win about 8 or 9 games. I've touched up on Wisconsin. I think Purdue is going to be a really sneaky good team to watch out for. I think they are going to beat someone this year. I don't know. I'm not familiar with their schedule. But I believe they get Penn State to start the year, same night as West Virginia. I would not be shocked at all if Penn State or if Purdue won that game. I know they play obviously Wisconsin and Iowa. I think they get one of the other big teams in the East. That's not Penn State, Michigan State, Ohio State, or Michigan. But
yeah, I think for them, like you said, circle Thursday night. That game won't get a lot of national coverage. Comparative to, I think, the Backyard Brawl is taking.
I actually think, the Backyard Brawl might get more eyes than that game.
Yeah, and then they kind of have not a lot on their schedule. Syracuse, Florida Atlantic, Indiana State in the non-conference, so 3 easy wins for pretty much 2/3 of the country. And then the kind of the beginning part, the only ranked team preseason on their schedule is a trip to Madison. other than that, they can kind of
that game is probably. I think that's the game I said is going to decide the Big Ten West, and I gave Wisconsin the advantage. But I like your guts to go with Purdue to win the Big Ten West. I think that's a good pick.
I think they have the same benefit that Michigan does in a very weak schedule for Purdue comparatively to a lot of the other teams.
Iowa, I said it before with Iowa. I think they can only win in a specific way. They have to run the ball. They have to get turnovers defensively and create more possessions because they don't have the horses offensively to score. I mean, remember last year they were ranked number 2 in the country, I believe, at one point. They were creating turnovers left and right, but that only lasts so long.
Yeah, so I think Iowa's a team that they have. Yeah, I know you have them at 8-4. I think that's their ceiling for me as an 8-win team. I see them probably closer to more of a 7-5, 6-6 team. With the
I think 7-5 is probably fair.
I don't think that they have the ability to create turnovers that they've had in the last couple of seasons this year. So I don't think they've replaced the secondary as well as they would have liked.
Yeah. So then it brings us to the next tier, which are teams that really probably aren't that good that will probably get a bowl game. Minnesota, Maryland, I would put Nebraska in there. Maybe a Northwestern, although I don't think I have Northwestern making a bowl game. But I still respect Pat Fitzgerald enough. But this is when we can touch up on the Northwestern-Nebraska game that was in Ireland last week. Scott Frost has to be done. I know it's week 0. The season hasn't really officially started yet, but this is his last year, I feel like. That was the nail in the coffin.
You saw how that game ended. I know you have Nebraska at 7-5. I think.
Yeah, not anymore. No, I think 6-6.
That's one that you want. I feel like knowing you, that's a prediction you want back even after week 0.
I still don't think it's ridiculous for that to happen. I thought Nebraska looked decent at times in that game against Northwestern, but Scott Frost clearly got outcoached. And I'm very high on Pat Fitzgerald. But he got outcoached. So yeah, in hindsight, I'd probably go back to 6-6, or 5-7. I don't know, but I still think 7-5 is attainable for Nebraska.
Yeah, I think kind of there's those middle tiers. I think Nebraska needs a couple of breaks to get to 7-5 for me. I think talent-wise and coaching-wise, I think Nebraska's a 5-win team. I don't see a whole lot better for them. And I think, because what for me weighs on them in the last half of the season is you'll see how committed that locker room is to Scott Frost. Yeah. And I think that's what, if they play the season and you eliminate all the noise, they might have the talent for 7-5, 6-6. But I think kind of, the noise from the left and right ear weighs on them towards the latter part of October and November and cost them games that they probably should win.
I'm putting Minnesota in this camp because I think PJ Fleck is a good head coach. They're losing some studs defensively, but they still should be able to get to a bowl game. I've looked at their schedule. It's pretty favorable. I think the only real non-conference threat is Colorado, and I think that game's at home in Minnesota.
Me, I don't even think that game's that close. I think Colorado is so weak on both sides of the ball, where Minnesota shouldn't struggle with that game either.
Yeah, I just meant I could see Minnesota going like 3-0 in non-conference and being like 3-6 or 4-5 in the Big Ten, and which I think I had 4-5 and finishing 7-5. Northwestern, I think that looked like a bowl team to me. I don't think they're going to compete for the Big Ten championship, but I think I had them at 5-7. They look like a bowl win team or a bowl.
Yeah, I think I see them as better than I would have said probably a 4-win team myself. Kind of in that same range that you have them before last week. Kind of having that week 0 benefit. Yeah, I think that bumps them to me where they might lose a game they shouldn't and end up 5-7, but I do see them kind of one of those lower tier kind of bowl games in mid-December.
Then bringing up the rear, I think, is Illinois, Indiana and Rutgers. I wouldn't sleep on Illinois. I don't think Brett Bielema is that bad of a coach. I think just he got outclassed in the SEC. Indiana, I feel like the magic has worn off a little bit with Tom Allen. He got off to a good start, and they were good in 2020 in a shortened season, in a weird shortened season. I remember people pounding the table that Indiana should go to the Big Ten championship because Ohio State didn't initially fill the requirements to go to the Big Ten championship, if you remember that.
No, I do, and that's what I think. What's really been the problem for Allen and his staff is they've been figured out. I don't think they're a very inventive staff. You get those coaches that are able to come up with something new every season, and I don't think Tom Allen, he's, obviously an older coach. I think that's where the issue lies, is that he's had his ways for a long time. Just the lighting there. But I think that's the issue really in that I don't think Indiana's that good of a team this season either.
I don't think I touched up quite on Maryland. I would put them in the tier above with the Minnesotas and Nebraskas of the world. I think they're going to be decent. They should make a bowl game. I think they have a really good passing attack with Talia Tagovailoa and Raheem Jarrett and some of the other pass catchers that they have. I don't trust Mike Locksley. I don't care what you throw at me. I don't think he's a good coach, but he still has enough talent there. They ought to be about 7-5. I feel like maybe they sneak up on someone or someone's and get to 8-4. And then Rutgers.
I think Lockley has the same issue that we'll kind of touch around some of the other Alabama expats in the past, where I think he's just got
not that good.
The shine of,
yeah.
He went to Alabama. He was out of Alabama. That's where he's got to be a good coach because he's got Nick Saban in his rotary dial. Like that to me has never been that big of a
and we'll get to like the Lane Kiffins and Sarks in a bit, but I don't think Locksley had that same cachet. Or is it cash?
No, I agree totally.
Then Rutgers, I do believe I forgot his name now.
Yeah, their new quarterback. I know who you're talking about.
No, I was head coach. I can see his face. Greg Schiano.
Yeah.
He's probably the only coach that's won there at a high level. I think he's going to right the ship, but it's Rutgers. I think it's going to take him a while.
It's going to take him a while, and I think even for me, Rutgers riding the ship in the Big Ten and supposed to be a Big East.
Bowl game, make a bowl game.
Riding the ship is a 7-win season for them.
I would agree. So that's the Big Ten. Let's save our conference for last. Let's shift to the SEC now. Due South. Like some of the other conferences, like the Big Ten, I think that this is a 2-team race.
Yeah,
this is a legitimate 2-team race, not necessarily like the Big Ten 2-team race.
Yeah, so this is a true, balance of power, Cold War style. I think more of the Cold War style is probably the two teams in the top of the West, with kind of their disagreements in the off season with a couple of West Virginia.
I see where you're going with that. Yeah.
And so we'll circle back to that here momentarily, but I think. I agree that it's the usual suspects. Cue the sound cue in the background. But I think you're going to see the same two teams you always do. I don't see the talent drop off for Georgia being that drastic. I think Tennessee's better than people give them credit for.
I actually think Tennessee's getting a lot of hype.
I love to hate Tennessee because I hate their fan base.
Yeah.
But that doesn't change what happens on the field, and I think Josh Heupel's one of the better new coaches in the SEC. And so I think that, the battle for second in the East for me between Tennessee and Kentucky is a closer one than a lot of people would think. I think Alabama runs away with the West a little bit, just because I think there's a delineation in talent. And as much as I love Jimbo, I don't see the recruiting paying off just yet because I think they're still kind of that they play with too much emotion for me as a program. It's a weird thing to say in the sport of football, but I think they just play with too much emotion, and that kind of costs them. And truly, for me, what keeps A&M from challenging Alabama are teams like Arkansas. I'm really high on Arkansas. I know you are as well, because I think Pittman is another one of those new coaches in the SEC that really changes things. And I think kind of just the other teams where I think A&M loses a couple of games they shouldn't is what keeps them down, and Arkansas being right there for team number 2 to find that third or fourth bowl game for the SEC.
Yeah, I see this back to what I was saying, a 2-team race between Bama and Georgia. I don't know if you said which one you're going with. I'm going to go with Bama. I would imagine you are too.
I am as well, just strictly for the offensive side of the ball. I saw what I needed to see from Stetson Bennett last year, but I think Alabama has reloaded offensively on the outside better than Georgia has.
Yeah. Georgia, I don't want to say the stars aligned, but it took a lot to get that national championship. And they certainly shouldn't apologize for it. But they needed a historically great defense and a down Alabama team that Nick Saban even said that was in a rebuilding year.
And Nick Saban was not happy with his roster last year.
And that was clear by the Florida game, which was week 3 or 4 or 5, somewhere in there. I think Georgia is still going to be very good. They're probably going to go into the SEC championship undefeated, just because I don't think there's a team in the East that can really beat them. But who knows? Maybe an Auburn or Tennessee sneaks up on them, and they lose 2 games and then or 1 game and then to Alabama in the SEC championship, making it 2. I think this is probably going to be Georgia's best offensive team under Kirby Smart. They return a lot of production offensively. And then they're always good defensively under Kirby Smart. It's not that I doubt that. I just don't think they're going to be nearly as good as they were last year.
Yeah, I would agree. The historic dominance will not be there. They'll still be one of the top 5 defenses in the country, but not.
Yeah, I believe other than his first year, Kirby Smart has had Georgia in the top 20 in scoring defense since he got there.
Yeah.
Then Bama, I mean, I could sit here all day talking about Bama. But best coach, best quarterback. I mean, they have the perfect trifecta. They got the best coach. They have the best, I think, offensive player in the country in Bryce Young. And I think they have the best defensive player in the country in Will Anderson.
Yeah, I think I agree right with those. I know we didn't get the depth of the awards, but I think Will Anderson is one of the better defensive players we've seen in recent memory, even in the SEC. I mean, I would put him even kind of – I think he has the potential to even be better than Aiden Hutchinson was coming out of Michigan last year, where I think his just ability to turn the corner on tackles is going to wreak havoc on – there's going to be a lot of really sad offensive line coaches playing Alabama this year.
So then there's another tier, and I would put Texas A&M, Arkansas – and I'll go Tennessee and Kentucky in this tier.
Tier I can agree with. Yeah.
A&M might be in like tier 1.5. They have a lot of talent. I'm kind of sick of all the hype though with Texas A&M and Jimbo Fisher. I want to see them put it together. Finally.
Right. That's for me too, and that's why I said where they lose games they shouldn't, playing with too much emotion, because I think they've spent so much time worrying about things that are outside of the white.
Yeah.
As a football reference. And I think that's A&M's biggest issue.
Then Arkansas. I like Arkansas. I don't think they're going to fall off much at all without Traylon Burks. I think KJ Jefferson is a better quarterback than people think. Sam Pittman, I'm not sure how good of a coach he is necessarily. But that team responds to him, and they have an identity, and they play hard for him. And I think that's incredibly valuable. So I think Arkansas is going to be a really good team. Tennessee, I'm not as high on Josh Heupel as you are, but I will say he has far exceeded my expectations so far for him at Tennessee. Hendon Hooker is one of the better quarterbacks of the country. Unfortunately, though, he's probably, fourth or fifth in the SEC? Maybe not quite that low, but...
Yeah, I wouldn't put him in percent. I would put him probably as my fourth behind Stetson Bennett at Georgia, Bryce Young, and then I could see you pick one of your other quarterbacks from that middle tier to put in front of him, but
then Kentucky. It's been talked about a little bit this offseason. Kentucky's more of a football school right now. Mark Stoops has done a really good job of building that program. They have a good quarterback, and Will Levis. Kentucky's going to be in the mix in the SEC East. They're just not as good as Georgia. And I think I had Kentucky finishing – I might have had them third because I think they go to Knoxville this year. And that game's likely going to decide second place.
Mm-hmm.
But Tennessee, I could see Tennessee being worse. I think I had Tennessee at 9-3. They're going to have to win a lot of shootouts, and that's just hard to do. I still had them at 9-3 though, because I don't think there's a lot of great offenses in the SEC East. So yeah, what do you think about that tier?
Yeah, I think that tier is spot on. I think potentially, Kentucky, Tennessee is a toss-up game for me. I think, I agree with it being, in Knoxville in front of 101,000, I think makes the difference. I like Arkansas on the same par as A&M just because I think the cultural issues cultural issues.
I wouldn't be shocked at all if Arkansas finishes second in the West.
Right, and that's where I am as well. But I think, kind of there's clear delineation of those four, kind of just the aesthetics of the uniformity of the SEC this year. Where you've got clear one and you've got a clear podium in both divisions, I think.
Yeah, then the next tier after these four, I would say, are LSU, Ole Miss, Auburn, Mississippi State. I would put Florida and probably South Carolina. This is a big group here.
Yeah, it's the chunk of the SEC. I think you've got so many teams. I think you could have pretty much all of those teams finishing at 7-5.
Which I kind of do. I went with Auburn to finish. I think it was 5th in the West. I'm not liking what I'm hearing out of camp with their quarterback situation. And that fan base, my friend Steven, who has been on the podcast quite a bit, is a big Auburn fan, diehard Auburn fan. I think he likes Brian Harsin a lot more than the rest of the fan base does. I'm very high on Brian Harsin. I think he's getting a raw deal there at Auburn. But they're in the shadow of Nick Saban right now. What's up?
Harsin has been very much set up to fail. I would say from
and then the AD just resigned. I mean, this feels like it's going to be it could be a disaster year for Auburn.
Yeah, I think it depends. You'll know what Auburn's going to be by week 3 because everything will kind of shake out with the administration debacle. Whatever's going to happen with Harsin's going to happen, I think, by the first month of the season, and that's. Auburn for me is 7-5 or 4-8.
I had them at 7-5, and I think that's kind of their ceiling. I have LSU finishing the same, 7-5. I think their win total right now in Vegas is 7.5, and some people say hammer the over. I would take the under.
I'm not. That's not an over that I would. There are many overs I would hammer. I think out of the SEC, but LSU is not one of them. I'm not particularly high on Brian Kelly taking over there. I think could be a good hire in the long run, but it's not a year one hire.
He's not a year one coach everywhere he's been. Even at Notre Dame, it took him 3 years. So
Cincinnati was a slow build for him. Mm-hmm. Notre Dame was a slow build for him. I don't like the way he left Notre Dame. Truthfully, either. I think that kind of hangs over him a little bit in the back of his own mind. I don't think the LSU fans cared, nor the administration.
I also don't like their
LSU
quarterback.
Also coaching recently doesn't get a lot of national hype, but I think could be a bigger effect on our administration in Morgantown. A lot of people realize Kelly Sine taking the job at LSU. That's a home run hire for that athletic department.
Was, yeah.
And I think that, that doesn't help them win football games, but I think it sets up, long-term stability and success in that athletic department.
Yeah. They'll get it right. I don't think it's going to be this year. They got to play Bama. They go to Auburn. I know they play Florida, and then obviously the rest of the West. I think they'll be lucky if they can get to 8 wins. Or not lucky, fortunate.
Yeah.
I don't like their quarterback, and like we said, it's always a slow build with Brian Kelly, and this is the toughest, I would say, job he's had so far.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough slow, but I think it might even be 4 years at LSU. I assume the administration will give him that amount of time, and so I think it's where year 3, might say November of year 3, where that team finally breaks a corner.
And then one team that I kind of have circled as my kind of not really a sleeper. I would say Arkansas is maybe more of a sleeper. But I'm high on Mississippi State this year. I remember when they hired Mike Leach, and he's been there now for about this. I think this is his 3rd year. And they haven't really finished kind of in the cellar the last couple of years. And I'm like, man, Mike Leach is too good of a coach to be in the cellar I know the SEC's tough, but he's won everywhere he's been. He's going to get this right, and I think he's poised to kind of do that this year. I think Will Rogers is a good quarterback. They'll be able to sling it and do the air raid as much as they want. I think they're better than people think. With that said, probably 7-5, maybe 8-4. It feels like a good number for them. Florida, year 1 with Napier, I don't really know what to expect, but they get Florida State and Utah, and they're out of conference. That's not easy. Then you're talking LSU and Georgia. So I have them at 7-5, and I think that's a good start if you're Napier.
Yeah, I think if you flirts with 6-6, I think Florida's fan base has been known to turn quickly on coaches in the past. And because they had those long runs of success in the past. And I think so that's where you lose a little bit. So I would put Florida more towards 6-6 because I still I know Napier's a good coach. And I know it's a good fit. I just question it year 1.
Yeah.
And so that's where I kind of sour on Florida a little bit. Mike Leach, one of my favorite coaches in the country. Excellent soundbite every single week. Not a Mississippi State grad, never been to Starkville, but
there's nothing there.
Press conferences more than I watch Neil Brown's, to be completely honest with you. And so I think they kind of turned a corner. They looked really good in the Egg Bowl last year.
And another thing with them, they lost a lot of close games last year. Remember, they were having tryouts for kicker because they kept missing field goals. So
yeah.
I would imagine it's going to be better. I don't know if that's going to be the case. But
I think Will Rogers, he gets the flashy numbers, and I think that continues this year as well.
Then to round out this tier, I got Ole Miss and South Carolina. Both I kind of have on the same level. South Carolina, I think going 6-6. I wouldn't be surprised if it finishes under 500, and that's not really an indictment of the program. I think Shane Beamer's done a really good job. He's another guy who has exceeded my expectations so far. Just the schedule's tough. I know they draw Arkansas from the West, and then obviously they got to play Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, and I think they play someone or Clemson, and they're out of conference, obviously. I have them at 6-6. I wouldn't be shocked if they finish below that. Same with Ole Miss, although I think Ole Miss's schedule at the front half of the year is much easier. Someone's got to finish last in the West, and I just went with Ole Miss. A lot of turnover. They lost a lot of production from last year. I do like the additions that they made, bringing in Jackson Dart, and I think it's Zach Evans, the running back from TCU. Um, and I like Lane Kiffin, but I think this feels like a transition year for Ole Miss.
Yeah, I think if LSU struggles offensively more than you are imagining, I can see them maybe winning a tiebreaker game with LSU and kind of flipping that. I'm not. I'll withhold judgment on Jackson Dart until the end of September. I think kind of just see if he's as good as the metrics and the kind of the physical attributes say he should be in the SEC. And I think that's kind of South Carolina. I agree. I see them kind of struggling more. I think being in the East saves them from missing a bowl game. Spencer Rattler, the transfer, that I think fits well because he will be comfortable in Shane Beamer's system, and I think that wins them a couple of games that people wouldn't give them normally. But I still wonder, like we talked about with USC, kind of that bouncing back and forth between which Spencer Rattler are we going to get at South Carolina? Was he comfortable? Was the issue really between him and the staff at OU, and you get the Spencer Rattler of, was it 2 years ago? And if you get that Spencer Rattler, I think South Carolina can even bump up and be a 7-5 team and win some games in year one with Spencer Rattler.
I agree. And then to round up the SEC, I'm going to talk Missouri and Vanderbilt. I don't expect much from either of these programs. Obviously, Vanderbilt is Vanderbilt. I hate to pick on them. They will be lucky probably to win 4 games. And I think the same actually goes for Missouri. And not really because I'm down on the program. I don't know how good of a coach Eli Drinkwitz is. He's recruited well. But their schedule is brutal. They have Kansas State in the out-of-conference. They draw Auburn from the West. And then Tennessee, Georgia, South Carolina, Florida. And then Arkansas on top of that from the West. So it's not going to be easy, I think, for Missouri. Again, I think 4-8 feels right. I think if you finish higher, with a better record than that, you feel really good if you're Missouri.
Yeah, I think both of those programs, Missouri, I think, is clearly the better program.
Yeah.
I was surprised. Even playing Hawaii, I was surprised at Vanderbilt's offense.
I would agree.
That gives them some hope. But I think Vanderbilt fans are used to what they're used to and will not be surprised when the rest of the season doesn't go well.
All right, so last but not least, let's finish up with our Big 12. I don't know about you, Dylan, but I look at this conference – and the other 4, we hovered between 2 or 3 teams, 1 to 3, I guess, depending on the Big 10. The Big 12 this year, I could see 3, I could see 4, or 5. What do you think?
Yeah, no, this is like...
This is the most wide-open conference, I feel like, in the country.
This is as wide open as the geography and the plains of the conference. Matches up well. Oklahoma, I still don't know what to make of. I don't know about Venables as a head coach. That worries me a little bit for them. The talent turnover with Lincoln Riley, I feel like there's some cultural things that Venables has to get right in that locker room for that to be a 10-11 win team. Baylor, I think, doesn't lose much. I think that they are going to be about the same team they were last year, which was a really good football team. Ability to run, play defense. Texas is where, I'm kind of, I don't know.
I don't want to get ahead of myself.
Texas is what Texas has been for the last 10 years. They could mess around and be a 6-win team again. They could win 9. I don't know. Bijan Robinson's a star out of the backfield. Quinn Ewers, I don't know if he matches up to the hype. So he's looked good in camp. But him winning the job was not a surprise for me at all. Because truly Texas's quarterback play last year was the problem with that team. And so I think any 4 or 5 star recruit coming in or transfer coming in was going to win that job. Just happened to be Quinn with the name recognition that he had coming out of Ohio State, coming out of Texas when he was supposed to have originally gone to Austin in the first place and been the rescue of that program. Chris Kleiman's got Kansas State going in a way that as a West Virginia fan I don't like, because then that means there's one more team that is consistently tough on the schedule. And so I think they're another team that could mess around. They get a couple of games that fall the right way. The weather in Manhattan is what it is in October and November. You never know what's going to happen. I think that Kansas State could mess around and be a 9-10 win team as well, depending on how the schedule falls or how Texas looks or Oklahoma struggles. And then Oklahoma State,
I'm not as high on them as the media.
Do. Spencer Sanders still scares me.
I don't think he's that good.
And so I don't know. Like I know what to make of Oklahoma State by about mid-November. Most other teams I know by October 1st what kind of season they're going to have. Oklahoma State, I might need till Thanksgiving to know what kind of team they have.
Yeah, so I think you named the exact same 5 teams as me. I think all 5 of those teams have a legit shot of winning the Big 12 in some capacity. I don't believe you said who you're picking. It sounds like Baylor.
I trust Baylor more than I trust Oklahoma.
Okay, well, this is our first big difference. I am going with Oklahoma. Venables, you mentioned culture. I think Venables is going to get the culture. He's from Kansas. He coached at Oklahoma for years as an assistant before going to Clemson. He knows that culture there in the program and with the fans. I think he's going to be a great fit. And I think they added a really underrated quarterback in the transfer portal in Dylan Gabriel from UCF. They still have talent. I know it's a lot of turnover, but they still have talent there in Norman. I don't see Oklahoma being a playoff team, but like 10-2 feels about right to me. Winning the Big 12, that's what I think at least. I have them at 11-2 and winning the Big 12. I have them meeting Baylor in the Big 12 championship. They actually are losing more production than I thought, particularly on defense, but I trust Dave Aranda as a defensive mind. They actually made an upgrade at the quarterback position with Blake Shapen, who is an underrated, put up good numbers at the FCS level. And I think they're the best team in the trenches other than Oklahoma in the Big 12. So those two feel like the best teams in the conference. I have Texas in third at 8-4. I will say this. I've been hard on – I don't know about you, Dylan. I've been hard on Texas in the past. I make fun of the media for giving them so much hype every year. But it does feel a little differently with Sark. What do you think?
For me, I just don't –
Maybe it's because I live here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't trust Sark probably as much as you do because I've seen the debacle that was him on the West Coast.
Yeah, that's fair.
And so I think that's still kind of burned in my memory, not dealing with it on a daily basis. And Colorado folk are not high on the state of Texas. So I am used to feel right at home or among friends of dislike of everything athletics about Austin. And so I think, truly for me, I don't see Texas winning 8. I think Texas wins 7. I think it's a good year for them to maybe cool. Like Texas, the fan base is going to be what the fan base is going to be towards Sark. And if they start off slow, I think that dooms their season. If Texas doesn't start 3-1, 4-0, then I think they're in trouble.
Well, we'll know in week 2 against Bama.
I see that game being like 56-7, if you want my honest hot take right now. I don't see that game being particularly close. If I see a spread under 20, I might put my entire bank account on it. And so for me, I think Kansas State and Oklahoma are better than Texas is. I would put Texas as my number 5.
Okay.
Maybe number 6 if Iowa State plays well offensively.
Yeah, all right. So we differ there. I think Texas is getting there. Like I said, I'm cautious with them. But to me, it does feel different with Sark. I do think he's building something special. They had a really good transfer portal class. They had a really good recruiting class. I don't think it's this year, maybe next year. We'll see what Quinn Ewers does this year. He's supposed to be a big deal. I don't know anything about him, haven't seen him play. My fourth and fifth teams, I believe I have Kansas State in fourth. Chris Kleiman, his work at Kansas State has really flown under the radar. Apart from the weird 2020 season, he's won 8 games. His first year, he won 8 games last year. I think he has a team there that's ready to win. And then in fifth, to round up the top half of the conference, I have Oklahoma State. I don't like Spencer Sanders. I think he's overrated, and how he was picked to win the Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year, I have no idea.
See, I hadn't seen that because I don't tend to watch preseason conference awards. Kind of always make me laugh.
But that shows where the Big 12 is right now.
That's a laughable selection for me.
Yeah. Then defensively, they lose a lot of production from a defense that was really good, and they also lose their defensive coordinator who did a lot of good work with them, and Jim Knowles, who's now at Ohio State. I don't think Oklahoma State's going to be that good. I think I had them at 8-4. This is it's going to be a log jam of 8-4 and 7-5 from the third spot in the Big 12 to probably the 7th or 8th spot.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
So then, back half of the conference, I think we're going to agree here. The first 2 teams are probably Iowa State and our Mountaineers at 6 and 7.
Yeah, I think those are the 2 there. I think it depends on how the offenses shake out for both programs.
Yeah.
That make the difference between who's your 6th spot, and maybe if any of them if either of those 2 jump up to number 5 with the right schedule.
I don't see it with Iowa State. I mean, they're only returning about 40% of their production from last year from a team that went 7-5. And I'm giving Matt Campbell the benefit of the doubt. Maybe some bad breaks they had some bad breaks go their way, just got unlucky. And then I'm gonna again give him the benefit of the doubt that he has established a winning culture similar to what Dave Aranda has done at Baylor. That he has guys ready to step up and replace the Brock Purdy's and Breece Halls and Charlie Collar and all those guys. But this could easily be a trying year for Iowa State, I feel like.
Yeah, it's either a step even or a big step back. I think, like I said, 8 is their Cinderella season is 8 wins. And then I think you're right on with 7-5, maybe 6-6. They struggle offensively like I expect them to potentially. Or, they could even be, if the offense is as bad as it could be, they might not make a bowl game.
Yeah, so how about our Mountaineers? Do you have them in 7th? That's roughly where I had them.
Yeah, I think 7th is a slot this year where there's going to be chunks of the fan base that are going to be displeased with 7 wins, but when you have the 3 years, that's right about where I think they are.
I think that's where that's the number Brown has to get to this year. He can't win 6. If he wins 6, he better beat Pitt and Virginia Tech. Or one or both, but 7 feels like the number for him. And it wouldn't even convince me that we're going in the right direction. But 7, I'd be like, okay. We'll see who you bring
7
back.
and 5 for me, for Neil Brown to keep his job. It depends on how the 5 look.
Yeah, I would agree. But it's not an easy schedule for us, but I think it's manageable. We got Pitt, Virginia Tech, obviously, in the out-of-conference. And then we go to Oklahoma State, to Texas, to Iowa State. But we get Oklahoma and Kansas State, and I forget the others now, TCU. The winnable games at home. So 7-5 feels right. I feel like we're going to beat one of Pitt or Virginia Tech. And then probably go 5-4 in the conference.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that seems right. I think to get to 8, you have to sweep the non-conference, which is doable. Because I think Pitt is a very winnable game.
I do
will
too.
Feel a lot like a home or a neutral site game. Blacksburg, always worries me historically.
Yeah, but they're not in a good spot as a program.
Softer bullet to take.
Yeah.
Of those two road games.
Another thing with our Mountaineers, I can't think of very many times that a team upgraded at offensive coordinator, upgraded at quarterback, and returned just about every major contributor in the trenches and wasn't somewhat competitive.
Exactly. That's like they have all of the pieces to mess around and win 9 if they're absolutely picture perfect all season long.
It would take a lot for that to happen, I think. But I think 8 is within reach. I think 6 is probably the likely number. 7 or 8 is within reach too. Then the last 3 teams, I do have TCU finishing bowl eligible, but at 6-6. And then I round out the Big 12 with Texas Tech and Kansas. Sorry, Kansas, and I like Lance Leipold. I think he's going to build Kansas up to a respectable program. What's that?
I said I think Kansas is these days, if they win 5, they'll have a parade at the end of the year.
I tell you this: if Kansas gets like 4 or 5 wins, then I would be 100% convinced that Leipold has them in the right direction. Texas Tech, McGuire is doing good work there in terms of recruiting. I still think he's got a hell of a rebuild. I just don't think the roster's right, so this feels like it's going to be a tough year in Lubbock. TCU, the media loves TCU every single year. I always point out their flaws, and I'm almost always proven right. I don't like Max Duggan. Gary Patterson's gone, and I don't think Sonny Dykes is an upgrade at head coach. They were terrible defensively, and I don't think Dykes is going to do anything to fix that. So I see them as a 6-win team.
See, I would even, for me, I flip TCU and Texas Tech.
I was close, actually. I was close.
So, yeah, because I trust McGuire to get it right more than I trust Sonny Dykes to fix a defense.
Yeah.
Because that's the joke you lead off the comedy club is Sonny Dykes fixing your defense.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the issue that you have there is that I see TCU for West Virginia or some of these other teams to kind of shuffle around that log jam. I think potentially pushes TCU closer to 4 than it does 6. I think this could be a really bad year for TCU.
It could, yeah. They have. I know they go to Colorado. They'll be in your neck of the woods on Friday, and then they have SMU, who I think could be the Group of 5 representative in a New Year's 6 ball game. I don't have that, but I think they could. Then obviously the Big 12 is the Big 12. So yeah, it could be. It could be a long year in Fort Worth.
Yeah.
And I don't understand the media's fascination with TCU. I know that they recruit pretty well. Obviously, being there in the DFW area.
All you have to do is open the door, and a couple of kids walk through looking for the wrong room.
I just don't see this team being better defensively with Sonny Dykes in charge, and I don't like Max Duggan.
No, I think Max Duggan is another. He's Spencer Sanders with less talent around him. For me.
I think he's probably, I don't know about worse. The Big 12 is just full of quarterbacks that I don't love.
I mean, say Spencer, if you give me my only 2 options to win a football game for Spencer Sanders and Max Duggan, I'm taking Spencer Sanders.
I am too. I mean, yeah, I think the best quarterback in the conference is probably Dylan Gabriel.
No, I think he steps in. I think you've got between him, transfer at Baylor, and then
I think them two and JT Daniels are probably the top 3.
And I don't even feel like that's us being homers with JT Daniels. I think just if healthy,
when he's healthy, he's good.
Best quarterback.
Yeah, when he's healthy, he's good. He just can't stay healthy, and I don't trust we can keep him healthy. Have you seen our offensive line since Greer left? It's been terrible.
Yeah, I think this is what gives me hope as Mountaineer fans have been known to be very hopeful in August every year, is I think what gives me hope is this is the best returning offensive line we've had in a while.
Yeah, I will say this. The offensive line played a lot better last year
If you
at the tail end of the season.
I think the last 6 games last year was a fantastic finish.
The O-line was much better the last 6 games. It was really bad in the bowl game, but Minnesota had a really good defensive front, and you had 3 weeks off. I think that's an outlier. I think the O-line was really good at the tail end of last season. You return all 5 starters, and I think 4 out of the 5 on the 2 deep on the offensive line. We should be much better up front on both sides of the ball. But we've talked enough about the Mountaineers. But that's all 5 of the Power 5 conferences. Do we talk Notre Dame? Do we talk New Year's 6? Group of 5 representative in the New Year's 6?
Yeah, I think you kind of hit the 2 that I would think coming out of the group of 5. I think BYU or SMU is ultimately the team because I don't really see a whole lot coming from the other conferences. Although I will throw, it's not been talked about, they kind of just, people are kind of just casting them back to the wayside. Cincinnati's still there.
I think Cincinnati they strike me as like a 9-win team. Like some of the other names I've mentioned, I think Fickle has established his program, but he's got to replace a lot of good players. So this feels kind of like not a down year, but
yeah,
I think they regress a little bit.
You see towards the end of the year, I think you see someone like a BYU, SMU kind of flirting with the mid-teens as their final ranking, and Cincinnati, I think, sits exactly where they are now in the preseason, or like 2021.
The group of 5 representative is likely going to be BYU or someone from the American. The American has the respect of the committee. I mean, in the 8 years of the New Year's 6, I think the group of 5 representative has come from the American 6 times.
And Cincinnati last year finally breaking the glass ceiling, I think, and not everybody was, I think the committee, or at least contingents of the committee, were looking for Cincinnati to wet the bed last year, and they didn't.
Yep. And then BYU, I consider to be like, everyone says like there's 65 teams in the Power 5. I always consider BYU to be the 66th team in the Power 5. I respect the program a lot. They go out there and schedule teams. So they got like Stanford, they got Notre Dame, they got
they schedule
Baylor, Arkansas. They're going to have a chance to win games and make an impact with the committee. And if they can go 10-2 with that schedule, I think they're in a very good spot.
I think 10-2 with BYU's schedule puts them like, a 10 or 11 win season for them puts them at the cusp of the top 10.
Yeah,
like 11 to 15.
Then other teams that I like are, I'm going to throw Boise in there just because of the name. I like UTSA. I like Houston, UCF, SMU. I don't really see anyone from the MAC. I'm trying to think who else I had. The Sun Belt, you got to include Appalachian State. I think that those are the main ones right now. But my pick was BYU, obviously, in my blog. I'm very high on the Cougars this year.
Yeah, I think they would be my pick as well, just given the historicness of them. Satake is one of the best coaches in the country for me.
He's done a good job.
Get a lot of talk. And so
I think this is his best team at BYU.
Yeah, and you're kind of just looking. They basically have their entire defense back from a really stout defense last year, and that's how you win games the latter part of the season, or against really good teams.
They're also one of 19 programs in the country that returns the head coach, offensive coordinator, and starting quarterback.
Which, that level of consistency, when you're one of the top, your top 16%, 17% of the country already with just consistency, And it's not like some of the other teams out of that 19 are probably teams that you're never heard of.
Like Bama is likely one, but
BYU for me is you're returning a quality quarterback, a quality coach, a quality coordinator.
Yeah,
which is rare even out of probably that 19.
Yeah. So how about Notre Dame? I don't see them winning 10 games, but what do you think?
Yeah, I think 9 is right. 10 if they're lucky. I think Marcus Freeman keeps the drop off to a minimum.
I think he's a rising star at the coaching.
Yeah, I think he keeps Notre Dame as much as you and I like to dislike Notre Dame, given our upbringings. That I don't like it when Notre Dame's good, but I think Marcus Freeman gets them good and keeps them there.
Yeah. They don't return much production on offense. I don't care for their quarterback, or I don't even know who their quarterback is, so that's a negative right there. Defensively, they weren't that good last year. They were inconsistent, but they return a lot of production. Marcus Freeman recruited well last year, but those guys are young. The schedule isn't easy. I think they have road trips to North Carolina, Ohio State, and then they have neutral site games against Navy and BYU. And then obviously on top of that, I think they got Stanford and USC. I don't see them winning 10 games. I think it would take a lot for them to win 10 games. I think 9-3 feels right for them.
9-3 feels right, and if forced to pick one side or the other, I would lean closer to 8-4 than 10-2. And I truly they are this year's Texas for me.
And I think they played Clemson, but at home.
And so for me, I kind of laughed when I saw number 5.
Yeah, I don't think they're that high.
Because I see them sliding. Like Notre Dame's media is like, oh, they're always better every year than they're expected to be. I was like, and back to the mean we go.
Yeah. All right, so let's do playoff. I think we're gonna have the same 4.
Yeah, I think we have the same 4, probably in the same order. If you asked me to rank our 4, 1 through 4, I would put Georgia potentially as my 4th, but we know the committee obviously will not do that.
Yeah.
As they showed last year. So I think the 4 for me are Alabama and Ohio State are the 2. For me, Utah could mess around. I don't think they're good enough to beat Alabama by the end of the year.
No, but if they are undefeated and Ohio State loses a game, I could see Utah at number 2.
Yeah, I could see that. And Utah, if Utah can slide into that 2 spot, because I think just based on the committee's preferences, Alabama's your 1, Georgia's your 3. Those positions, whether you flip flop what Ohio State and Utah look like, I think changes 2 versus 4 because they have to slide those 2 positions. And so I think for me, that's the 4. And then if the selection for me, I like Utah a lot to where I can see Ohio State missing a beat at some point during the season. And Utah, I feel like, is less likely to do so. And so I would put Utah in that 2 spot. And, I think Utah can beat Georgia offensively for me just by the end of the year in a shootouts type game, because that would put them, I would say they'll probably end up being your Fiesta Bowl, your West Coast swing of the playoff, to where that puts Utah fans in a more comfortable spot to travel, dominate the stadium. And so I think you can see Alabama beating Utah for me at the end of the year.
So you have Utah in the national championship? Did you just say that?
I'm saying that right now, yeah. I think Cam Rising can be that difference based on how they looked at the end of last year.
I didn't expect that, so it kind of caught me off guard. And you said, Bama over Utah. I was like, wait. Did he just pick Utah in the national title? But yeah, I have the exact same 4. Bama 1, Ohio State 2, Georgia 3, Utah 4. National championship, I am going with Bama and Ohio State. Unfortunately, I'm going to take chalk and pick Bama. This honestly might be Nick Saban's best team. Uh, and I don't really like to throw that around. Last time I said that was in 2019, and if Tua doesn't get hurt, they probably do win the national title. Uh, but like I said earlier, they have the best coach, they have the best offensive player in the country, they have the best defensive player in the country. That's quite the trifecta. Then on top of that, you factor in they always recruit well at receiver, they always recruit well at offensive line, even though those are two question marks going into this season. They're going to have the best pass rush in the country, mainly because of Will Anderson, but also because I think is it Dallas Turner? No, I think he's the Major League Baseball pitcher. But the other guy across from him, first name Dallas, don't remember his last name. Let me look real quick.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with
you
that.
know, you know where I'm going with this though. And then in the secondary, they have two potential first-round picks, and Jordan Battle and Eli Ricks. Like they are going to be really good.
Yeah, I think
no, it is
me,
Dallas Turner. Okay, I thought he was a pitcher for the A's. Oh, that's Dallas Braden.
Dallas Braden. Yeah, I was going to say Dallas Braden or Dallas Keuchel.
Dallas Braden for the A's. Yeah, I was thinking of him. Dallas Turner. Them two coming off the edge, they averaged for like, I think 25 sacks last year and 50 tackles for loss. Or they combined for that much last year. Bama's going to be really good, man. I shouldn't say I hate to say it. I hate to burst people's bubbles. But Bama's going to be really good.
Yeah, I think people are going to, want Alabama to take a second step back. And it's been 15 years since Alabama's
It's happened. It's happened. Not much, though.
But I would say it's been since Nick Saban. Nick Saban doesn't make the same mistake twice.
No, I mean, you said 15 years, and I believe I counted it up. He's been to the national championship 9 times at Alabama. So that's 6 years where he didn't make it. So that's his first 2 years he didn't make it. Then he didn't make it in 2013 and 14. That's 4. Then, 2019 and I'm missing one somewhere. Oh, 2010. So that was his 4th year, I believe. That was the down year. So it rarely happens.
And do you really think that a team that's going to have I would say one of the two best defenses in the country and returns the guy that I don't know just won the Heisman last year?
You return the Heisman. You return the best defensive player in the country. You have Nick Saban as your coach. You return your coordinators. That's a lot of stability. That's a lot of talent. A lot of great elite players on that team. I think Bama's going to be scary good.
Yeah, I think this is a team that averages 45 and gives up 15 every week.
Yeah, I just, barring injury, I don't really see a team matching up with Bama.
Yeah, I would agree with that totally.
Well, that's it. We got through that in a little over 2 hours, so not too bad, I guess. But anything else we need to touch up on? I mean, we spent about half that time. It feels like talking about the backyard brawl.
Yeah, that's what I think. I think this, a good length for a full season preview.
That's true.
We're previewing an entire season, and like I say, if we didn't have a rivalry coming back for the first time since you and I were,
if it didn't have
driver's licenses,
if it wasn't personal to us, we wouldn't have touched up on it so much.
Absolutely, and that's what pushed us over the 2-hour mark. But I think we gave each conference their due, and I think we didn't miss a whole lot. And truly, I think we went the least amount of time on the Big 12 as a conference.
Probably, yeah. Yeah, that's something that I switched up last year with my blog. Because I don't know if you had paid attention to before. It used to be I would touch up on one team in every conference, basically just the conference winner. And then last year I was like, why don't I just show the standings of all the divisions and all the teams and the records. And I was like, that would be too much writing. I was like, well, not if I keep it to a couple sentences for each team, Then next thing you know, I'm like, hey, I can write 4 to 5 paragraphs on every team and touch up on every single team in the conference. It doesn't have to be,
It doesn't have to be a full.
It doesn't have to be 10 sentences about every single team. So I changed it up last year and I liked it. It was actually quicker to write, believe it or not. And so I wanted to do this with the podcast as well. Touch up on every team because I don't like when people just go through every conference and just touch up on Bama and Ohio State and Texas and then they move on.
Yeah, because that's what we have ESPN for, is to talk about those 5 teams every year.
Well, that's all ESPN
really
does.
Care about college football can do this for 2 hours and talk about the games that you're going to be watching at noon every week.
Yeah, for real. Is there anything else we need to discuss?
I think that wraps it up.
Are you a Lord of the Rings fan by chance?
I am not.
Okay.
I know vaguely what occurs, but it's not on my forte.
I was just curious if you were going to watch the TV show coming out on Friday.
I'm sure somebody will probably drag me into watching an episode or two.
How about Game of Thrones? I guess if you don't like Lord of the Rings, you probably don't watch Game of Thrones.
I watched Game of Thrones back in my late high school, early college days for like a season, but never stuck with it.
Okay. I was going to ask, the spinoff is going on right now, and it's pretty good. But 0 for 2.
Like my golf game.
Like my golf game. All right, my man. Well, I appreciate you coming on. Maybe you pop back in during the season. I don't know. I would like to touch up more on college football. My usual co-host, James, we'll talk about it, but we get more in depth with the NFL, and I would like to have something separate if we're not going to do it there about college. So maybe I don't know about weekly, but maybe every now and then you pop on.
Yeah, we talk, throw it in every month or so, and kind of just see where the season takes us, and then for sure, Champ Week.
I'd love to do weekly, but I got too much shit. To quote Tom Brady, I got too much shit going on.
Yeah, and I will be, kind of just to throw it out there that my schedule is a little busier than it was pre-COVID, because I think kind of just going off, understanding your guest, I think I'm the first father to ever appear on the podcast.
First father, no.
No? Okay.
No, my friend Steven, who just came on a couple weeks ago, is a father of twin boys, who are, I believe, 1 year old. 1 year old?
So he's in the thick of it. So
another buddy of mine, William, has come on the show, and he is a father of 2, but one is 4, the other is maybe a year old. So I've had a few fathers on, but no, I did not know that you were also a father.
Yep, no, I've added that to the repertoire in the last 2 months or so. So
gee whiz, I did not know that. Is it a boy or a girl?
It's a little girl. I'll throw it on the old screen share here, and drag this over. And kind of drop it.
Now that you mention it, maybe I did see that. Maybe I did see you announce that on Instagram or something, but it just didn't occur to me.
Yeah, one that looks, say, a little bit cuter than the two of us.
Oh my goodness, that is adorable.
Yeah,
I don't see much Sine in her.
Yeah, she's listening a little bit. Lucky for her. So
I said the same thing with my buddy Tyler, who had a baby last year. The moment I saw that baby, newborn, I was like, I don't see any of her mother in her. And the older she gets, the more I'm proven right. She looks more and more like my buddy.
Yeah. Straight out the first week, she looked exactly like I did. And I was afraid for her future a little bit with that as much as
maybe it's the complexion. I thought I didn't see you, but maybe it's the complexion.
Yeah, that's what. She's gonna come out a little tanner than I will. Lucky for her.
Is this your girlfriend, the Brazilian girlfriend of yours?
No, this was the preceding Venezuelan.
Venezuelan. Well, you have a type apparently.
But so she's gonna be taking up my time. She's the reason I'll be in Dallas this weekend to get some more dad time. Hopefully so, and then I'll have the like you mentioned, the Brazilian girlfriend who wanted to play hairstylist. You and I had the fun teaser where she's like, "I need you to look good for the cameras."
No.
Babe, we were talking football. We were two men talking college football.
We don't do that shit.
No one's looking at us.
Shoot, dude, I don't even think I said it. I've rolled out of bed, put a hat on, and done the podcast. Like, didn't have... I probably brewed some coffee, put a hat on, didn't, do anything with my beard, and hopped on the podcast and talked football. So, we're good.
But I'd be remiss if I didn't shout out those two cuties keeping me busy. So
that's awesome. Well, again, I appreciate you coming on. Football season is here. Backyard Brawl. I'm excited.
Yep, Thursday night. Everybody take off work on Friday just in case, good or bad.
Let's end it on a high note with our favorite saying.
Is it Neil Diamond's favorite saying?
Yeah, I think we're on the right track here. Sweet Caroline.
Eat shit, hit.
My man. All right, I'll see you later.
All right, buddy, take care.
Later.